Indigenous land you are currently located. We'd love to see where everyone is located. I'll give it a few minutes and then I'll repeat, so bear with me. Hello, everyone, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. As everyone slowly starts to trickle in, welcome to our Lunch and Learn. So feel free to take a look at the screen. There is a map on the screen, and type in the chat what Indigenous land you are currently located. Beautiful. I love seeing all of these different lands coming through the chat right now. Beautiful. We're going to give it one more minute and then we will go ahead and get started. Beautiful. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I love seeing all of the different lands come through. That is simply amazing. So we will go ahead and get started today. Again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. And happy Hispanic Heritage Month. We'd like to welcome you to our Lunch and Learn in honoring Indigenous Peoples Day. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Nicole Crisp, and I am a part of the Global Strategic Accounts and Innovation. Myself, as well as Joanna, who will be introducing herself in just a few minutes, have come together and we will be co-moderating today to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. This Lunch and Learn is very special as it is the first time 3 ERGs have come together to sponsor one event. So sending a huge shout out and thank you to Apiary, Berg, and Juntos. Thanks to each of them, each of our panelists will be receiving an honorarium to donate to a nonprofit of their choice. Absolutely love the collaboration between ERGs. Thank you all so much. So next, Joanna and I will be telling you a little bit more about ourselves and what being Indigenous means to us. So starting with me. So as I mentioned, my name is Nicole, and I am half African American and half Diné, which means the people. I grew up in a small town called Shiprock, New Mexico, which sits on the Navajo reservation. And one of the unique things about the Navajo people are that we have a clan system. Each individual has 4 clans that they assume at birth. These clans trace back to the origin story of the Diné people and are inherited from both of your parents. They consist of identifying your mother, father, maternal grandmother, and paternal grandfather. Essentially, they are the core of your identity. So each time you meet someone, you should identify yourself via the clan system. To fully understand what this means, I would like to introduce myself to you all in my native language. So, Yazie she'e Nicole Christina she, kia ani nishle, na kaifa jini bashichin, na kaidina edashiche, na kaifa jini dashinella. And basically what I said there is hello, my name is Nicole, and I went through each of my 4 clans. Each time that you introduce yourself, you also give insight to where you are from and who your family is. If you meet someone with the same clan, you are automatically related. So I could be a mom, a niece, sister, or have an extended relationship with someone via the clan system. Being able to intertwine 2 different yet similar cultures and being proud to live that journey out loud is what it means to be Indigenous to me. Though no 2 paths are ever the same, I guarantee we can find more in common with one another than we can our differences. Our ancestors have struggled and journeyed this far, and it is our responsibility to carry a new journey in this ever-changing world as a new generation. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Joanna, who can tell you all a little bit about herself.
Thanks, Nicole. Welcome. So for those of you that I haven't yet met, I'm Joanna. I'm part of the Global Strategic Accounts and Innovation team, and I also co-founded and co-lead Juntos. I'm excited to be calling in here today from Ohlone land, where it's a little bit too warm and bright and sunny for what should be October. Other people also know this land as Berkeley, California, which it so happens to be where Indigenous Peoples Day was first instituted in 1992. In my life, I've been greatly influenced by both my mother, who is an ex-nun with Eastern European roots from South San Francisco, and my father, who is Quiche Maya and a Guatemalan immigrant from the Guatemalan Highlands. I grew up greatly immersed in my Indigenous heritage. And to me, being Indigenous is both remembering and honoring where we come from. The Mayan creation story tells us that our people came from corn. So for me and for the Mayas, corn is sacred. Corn comes from the earth and goes back into the earth. It can be so many different colors, and each kernel is so uniquely different. Each part of corn can be used in so many different ways, and when it's at the end of its life, it goes back into the earth to fertilize and to give life for something else. As an Indigenous woman, I keep this mentality at my very center and core. Our ancestors sacrificed and gifted us with so much for us to be here today. And I remember that we're all part of a bigger vision. The earth and the cosmos were here a long time before we were, and will be here for a long time in one way or another after we leave this earth. So often I keep this corn pendant around my neck to keep me grounded and to remember that we're all uniquely connected and that we all have our own very unique part to play. So before we begin, I want to take a moment and invite Ixquik Salanic to say a few words of gratitude. Her husband, Willie, will translate.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Voy a conversar con el universo
I want to talk to the universe
para pedir permiso por esta actividad
in order to ask permission for this activity today
en mi idioma quiche.
in my own language. It's called Quiche.
Sakariktat, sakariknan, kinta hon sachmal makchiwe, kinta junto opchela, maltioshichela le katlemar, le ir, le tej, le suits, le mayur, le ishtat, le ishnan, chichkale, le kachumabal, kawanima, chichuntirole, lubear, le jun chomal kamik, le kamiki, le nawalimosh, chaya, pakalom, be, le konojele tak kaslemar, le konojele tak chumabal. Chakakale kabe, chakakale kaslemal, chakakale kahalom, chakakale kawanima, che juntirole klu. Chichon kamiki. Dios nawal, hunimosh, kibimosh, mushimimosh, kihebimosh, hobimosh, kibimosh, kukubimosh, washakibimosh, belhebimosh, lehokimosh, bulehokimosh, kablehokimosh, oshlehok nawalimosh.
So in just a few words, she was greeting or thanking the ancestors that represents the four corners of the earth, represented in different colors, but also thanking the clouds, the mist, and all the memories from our ancestors that are being present today. And then in our today's Mayan calendar is represented by the day of the water and clarity. And she counted 13 times to remember today's day.
Thank you.
That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and go back to sharing my screen. Can you all see my screen? Beautiful, thank you. Okay, so next we're gonna go ahead and introduce our panelists here. So first, we have Justine Villanueva. Justine is from Bukidnon tribe of Kalasangay, Bukidnon, Philippines, currently residing in the unceded Wintun Patwin homeland in Davis, California. She founded Sawega River Press, a community publishing company whose aim is to help Philippine children in the diaspora reconnect with their cultural and historical roots, as well as those yearning to find belonging in their present lands. Her press was recently recognized by the Independent Book Publishers Association for, quote, demonstrating commitment to publishing excellence while telling stories of their communities. Very happy to have you here, Justine. Next, we have Ixquik Salanic, who is a Quichimayan woman from Zunil, Quetzaltenango, Guatemala. Ixquik is a founder of projects that facilitate intergenerational knowledge, such as La Comunidad Quicotemal and the Abuela Luna Project, which researches ancestral knowledge of the moon. She is a lawyer who works to protect land and human rights for indigenous peoples of Guatemala, supporting women who are victims of sexual and gender-based violence. And lastly, we have Chile Yazie. Chile is Dene from Shiprock, New Mexico. Serving the Shiprock community and Navajo Nation for 45 years, his life is committed to activism, standing for human rights, and earth justice. Chile advocates for a worldview based on indigenous traditional lifeways, decolonizing institutions, including education of children, and sustainable agriculture that supports the health of the earth and the planet for future generations. Thank you all for joining us today. And I'll now hand it on over to Joanna, who will be moderating our panel.
Thanks, Nicole. And thank you all for being here today. What an honor. So I want to just start with the first question, which is about your Indigenous identity. Identifying as Indigenous can have a lot of meanings depending on who you are and where you were raised. What does being Indigenous mean to you, and how does it influence the choices that you make in your work?
Buenos días y buenas tardes a todos.
So good afternoon, everyone.
Es una palabra, es una pregunta interesante en el contexto porque nosotros
It's a very interesting
como-
question in the context, within the context.
como originarios nos sentimos gente
As originals, we just feel like people.
y cuando crecemos en nuestras comunidades solo somos gente
And when we grow up in our communities, we're only just people
con nuestras maneras de agradecer al universo,
with their own ways of thanking the universe,
de hablar con las plantas,
speak to the plants,
de caminar con la tierra,
and walk along with the land,
de convivir con los pájaros y
And
las flores.
live along with birds and flowers.
Pero cuando vamos a la ciudad
But when we go to the cities,
es cuando pues empezamos a ver que hay diferencias entre los humanos
we start seeing the difference among humans.
y vamos a la escuela y vemos que nuestras propias formas de ver y comportarnos con la vida son diferentes a los que la escuela nos quiere
And when
dar.
we get into school, we see the behavior that we're being taught in school is different than we've been learning or practicing.
En la vida que he tenido
In the life that I have had,
he tenido la oportunidad de convivir con varias culturas indígenas.
I've been able to experience different ways of living with other indigenous cultures.
Algo común que vemos es
Something that we see in common is
el respeto hacia la comida,
the respect for food, for example,
hacia los ancestros,
also respecting the ancestors or the elders,
hacia la comunicación con los astros,
also communicating with the cosmos, with the stars, and
y la relación que hay de comunidad.
and the relationship that it's among our community.
Para mí, ser indígena en el privilegio que tengo de ser abogada,
To me, being indigenous with the privilege of being also a lawyer,
me ha llevado a comprometerme
it has been to make me to commit
en el trabajo de la comunidad,
and the work that I do with the community.
y es parte del trabajo que he hecho como abogada,
It's part of the job that I've done as a lawyer.
pero es notable que la educación
It is very noticeable that among the education that we have,
viene de una perspectiva única,
it comes from a very unique perspective.
y la religión
And also religion
son elementos que para las juventudes del entorno donde me muevo
and it plays an important role among the generations that I work with.
los separan de su raíz.
They split up from the roots.
Y es por eso que nosotros fundamos la comunidad Quicotemal.
And that's why we created this Quicotemal community. Quicotemal means happiness. So it's a community of happiness.
En donde los jóvenes que están buscando abuelos con historias puedan conversar.
Where the youngsters come here and connect with the elders and want to learn about the roots and the history.
Historias y valores que sustentan su raíz.
And history and values that sustain our roots.
Y abuelos que ya no tienen nietos que quieren escuchar sus historias.
And elders that don't have any grandchildren, but that they want to speak out about and share their stories.
Los puedan compartir. Y en el entendido que estas historias llevan valores, tecnología y ciencia que se ha transmitido de generación en generación.
And understanding that these values also have technology, science, that have been passed around generation after generation.
Gracias.
Thank you, Ixquik. Justine or Chile, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Thank you, Ixquik. Salamat Tungkay. Thank you all for having me. First, I'd like to acknowledge the land that I'm on and where I'm learning to dwell. I am on the unceded homeland of the Winton Patman people, what is now known as Davis, California. I would also like to acknowledge the land where I trace my ancestral roots to, the land of the Bukidnon people of the southern Philippines, where I was raised before I immigrated to the United States. I define Indigenous by quoting one of my elder mentors, Lenny Strobel, in her book, Babaylan, Filipinos and the Call of the Indigenous. To be Indigenous is to have relational ties to the place, and community of beings in that place. It is to know the songs and stories and the ritual practices of that place. It is to live according to the wisdom taught by that particular place. I grieve that colonization has erased some of the Bukidnon indigenous knowledge from my memory. And I also grieve that I am separated from my ancestral land, being an immigrant. Therefore, as a Bukidnon in the diaspora, my responsibility is multi-pronged. I have the responsibility to unlearn the colonized mentality, the one that centers modernity and its manifestations in white supremacy and patriarchy, and to reclaim as much of my indigenous knowledge and practices. The other responsibility I have is to support indigenous sovereignty and to practice indigenous worldview wherever I am. This indigenous worldview is anchored on the belief that humans and other than humans are all related. We humans are not separate or superior to the rest of creation. And in the indigenous Filipino psychology, we call this spirit of kapwa. These responsibilities manifest in my work I write and publish children's books that highlight the Indigenous worldview so that we, along with our children, can learn this alternative to the dominant Western ways. This is my way of healing from the wounds of colonization. And through my books, I am remembering the Indigenous Bukidnon stories, languages, and ways of being. And through them, I try to find my ways to dwell in this Winton homeland with right relationships to the land. And I offer my work to those in the community with a need for similar healing. Thank you.
Greetings, my relatives, all of us that are on the call today. I appreciate Joanna and Nicole for bringing us together. And the place that they work, it's very commendable that the company that they work with engage in this activity to commemorate the Indigenous the Indigenous Day. I greet you in my native tongue, which is to say Yazie. And the term Yazie has been stylized to be our greeting, as a form of our greeting, to say like hello. But the elders, they talk about Yazie. Yah is the sky, the universe, the heavens, cosmos. And to say Yazie, the literal pronunciation is Ya'en, which is to say that I am a child of the universe. I am the universe. And it's a declaration, it's a reaffirmation to say that I am of the universe. And in that way, we claim our individual sovereignty as a five-fingered human being, to claim that authority and that power that we were placed here on this earth mother by our almighty creator. I want to just speak to this idea of indigeneity. Of course, all peoples were indigenous in their history. Those of us that remain on our homelands are commonly referred to as indigenous, but all peoples are indigenous to some land somewhere. Like here in the North and South America, the Western Hemisphere, those of us that are here on our homelands, obviously we are indigenous to these lands. But the newcomers, the immigrants, the invaders, of course, are all have roots to some place somewhere in their distant history. And indigenous to me means that to be able to claim your space on that ground, to be able to trace your roots to your story of creation, to that time of beginning of your peoples. And in many respects, I feel that to be able to be on one's original lands is a prerequisite to be able to recount those histories, those stories of creation. All people have their stories of creation. And so those of us that claim to be indigenous, we have that clear story, that clear lineage of where we are, who we are, and what we are supposed to be. So that entails with what my sister from Ixquik has said, that indigeneity includes our songs, our prayers, our ceremonies, and indigenous people here in the Western Hemisphere, we continue to honor our earth, to honor all of the powers that be with the stories, songs, and ceremony, as we are supposed to do. That is what Indigenous means to me.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing those beautiful perspectives and sharing some of your knowledge with us. I want to move on to the next question, which has to do with Great Place to Work. At our company, our mission is to help every place become a great place to work for all. Is there a belief or tradition in your culture that speaks to or would help us amplify our mission?
¿Cómo ser mejor?
Pues en el desarrollo de la tecnología
So within the development of
cultura maya.
technology of the Mayan culture,
hay una cuenta del tiempo
there is a count of time
en el que cada persona, cada
that every person,
niño o niña que nace,
a child, either if it's a boy or a girl, when it's born,
nace con una energía
it was born with an energy,
que es única
and that's unique,
y que es especial,
and that is special,
con virtudes
with virtues
y retos,
and challenges.
pero ninguna es el mismo que otro.
But none of them it's the same as the other one.
En el sistema colonizador
In the colonial system,
nos obligan a competir
they push us to compete,
y nos obligan a ser todos iguales.
and they push us to be all the same.
Pero cada uno es único y
But
especial,
every one of us is unique and special,
con virtudes
with
y con
virtues
retos.
and with challenges.
Y es empezar a reconocer nuestras virtudes y nuestros retos
And this is something that we need to start recognizing our virtues and our challenges
para poder aportar lo necesario
in order to share what is necessary
para una colectividad
in order to make
queremos
a
construir.
collective goal that we all want to build.
Podría hablar de mucho más, pero
I could speak
Esto
more
es
of that, but this would be
lo que puedo
the
compartir.
essence of something that we need to remember.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ixquik. As I mentioned in my prior answer, there is what we call the spirit of Kapwa. Professor Virgilio Enriquez, who is the founder of Filipino psychology, wrote that Kapwa is a recognition of a shared identity. It's an inner self that we share with others. And implied in this inclusiveness is the moral obligation to treat one another as equal. So in the context of work, because Kapwa recognizes the shared identity, there is a great value on relationships. The Kapwa spirit strives for the collective, not the individual good, through collaborative efforts. So at work, when things go well, we see it as a manifestation of the strength of the organization. And conversely, when things go wrong or there are conflicts, we see it as a manifestation of the weak spots in the organization. And additionally, whether and how we resolve the conflict is also affected by our relationship, by our pakikipagkapwa. Also, because Kapwa values the collective, reciprocity is key. It is important that we show gratitude for the gifts that we receive by reciprocating. And likewise, we are also encouraged to give and also be open to receiving. So in this way, we are leaning into abundance as opposed to scarcity. Another Filipino trait that has its roots in our indigenous tradition that I think is very helpful in the work context is what we call damdam, or it's the shared inner perception. It is the ability to empathize with your fellow Kapwa. And through Dum Dum, we develop a heightened sense of the context of what the situation is. So everything here is in context, and it requires an awareness beyond what's external or what's visible. So it requires a reading between the lines, a highly contextualized reading of the situation. And again, here, relationship is key, because Dum Dum strives for balance and harmony in the relationship. So I believe that when we let Kapwa, or our shared identity, and Dum Dum, which is our shared inner perception leading to empathy, guide our actions, not only in the workplace, but for sure in workplace, it will result to people feeling like they do belong and have something to contribute and make the workplace a great workplace for all. So I offer those two things from the Filipino psychology to you all.
I want to elaborate a little bit further on what I stated earlier. In knowing and realizing that all people of all colors, we have some indigenous, we're indigenous to some space somewhere. And I believe that that there were different and separate, perhaps at different times, instances of creation. I don't believe that there was only one creation, simply because we all have our creation stories. We're all unique. We're all special. We all have our very beautiful cultures and our distinctive ways, our life ways. In saying that, we don't want to leave out those people who have been severed from their original lands, from their homelands, either by choice or by force. At the time of our creation as human beings, we were all given a common set of original teachings, a basic understanding of how we are to be as human beings, the responsibilities that we have as human beings. And in this day and age, when there is so much negativity, so much violence and hatred, that a responsibility that we each have as individuals, that the people associated with a great place to work, your responsibility is to find that connection that you have. If that connection cannot be made, then we offer our original story, our original teaching, because it's common to all of us. It's one and the same set of teaching that we all got at the time of our creation. And it's very simple: to take care of each other, to take care of the earth. And that is accentuated by two great teachings that we have. One is kinship, to know and understand and to celebrate that we are related to all that there is, everything, whether it's considered living or even non-living. We are all related. That's a basic commonality that we should all have. The other one is a joke in our word, which is compassion. And again, to have compassion on all that there is. And, we always feel and believe that Indigenous must have a place at the table when all of the great powers, the great human powers of the world go to address the different universal issues that we have. For instance, the climate crisis. We say that Indigenous has answers. Indigenous can help resolve those great needs that we have. And we do. It's just unfortunate that the colonization, the white supremacy mentality that pervades many governments, many world leaders, that they do not recognize that Indigenous does have that knowledge. So the responsibility of the people that are associated with a great place to work is to understand your individual responsibility to take care of all that there is, to be kind to each other, to have compassion, to take care of our Earth Mother.
Thank you all. I want to pause there, but I do have one more question before we go into a Q&A. I grew up understanding that at our core, we're more similar than we are different. As humans, we must support one another no matter who the person is, because we each contribute in our own unique ways to protect the earth and our future. What advice do you have for each of us as individuals to guide us forward in our contemporary world?
En la cosmovisión de las comunidades indígenas
Within our indigenous cosmovision,
hay una individualidad que es la que hablaba en la pregunta anterior,
there is a certain individuality that I was talking before,
pero no está separada de la colectividad.
but it's not separated from the collective will.
Y esto se refleja en lo que dijeron mis antecesores,
And this is reflects of what my brothers and sisters said before.
que son los valores que tenemos en nuestras
These are
comunidades indígenas.
the values that we have among indigenous communities.
Soy, según el día en el que nací, yo
According to the day I was
fui
born,
motivada a ser abogada,
I was pushed or I was motivated to be a lawyer.
pero mi responsabilidad con mi comunidad es la lucha de recuperación de las tierras ancestrales.
So my responsibility among my community is to recover the ancestral lands that were taken away from us.
Y luchar porque las mujeres tengan una vida digna
And also fight
y
to
libre de
get
violencia.
rights for women. It can be free out of violence.
Y la vida me ha dado esa oportunidad
And
y
life
ese
has
reto.
given me this opportunity and this challenge.
Y entre nuestros valores,
So among our values,
voy a repetir algunos, la
I'm
reciprocidad,
going to repeat something that been said, being grateful,
el respeto hacia todo lo que está vivo y no está vivo,
and then the respect for everything that is alive and it's not alive,
y el reconocimiento que nuestras virtudes fueron dadas para contribuir a una colectividad.
and recognizing that the virtues it was given to us, it's we have to give it back to the community,
No para ser reconocidos,
not to be recognized ourselves,
no para ser aplaudidos.
not to be applaud.
Y ejemplo de ello es los músicos de nuestros pueblos indígenas.
An example of this is the musicians from our communities.
No se consideran artistas
They
ellos
don't
en sí mismos.
They don't consider themselves artists or to
Ellos
be.
tienen una responsabilidad
They are just they have a responsibility with the community
de acompañar los momentos felices de las familias
to be in the moments of happiness with the family
o los entierros de las
or
familias.
in the burials where they have to play music.
Pero con
say
la
goodbye
música
to.
se procesan emociones y se maneja energía.
With the music, you process emotions and work with energies.
Pero ese es el don y la responsabilidad que se
But
tiene
that's their gift and responsibility they have as a musician,
como individuo,
as individuals,
pero que también viene de la familia de donde nosotros venimos.
but also comes from the lineage of the gift that the family has been given in order to share with the community.
Es una pregunta muy compleja
This question is
Para
very
mí.
complex for me to say
porque yo vengo de una comunidad indígena
because I come from an indigenous community
y hay valores que solo son naturales en nuestra
and we
comunidad.
have values that are just natural within the community.
Pero puedo notar
But I can notice
que la formación académica
that the academic training,
nos quitan muchos de estos
it
valores.
takes away some of these values that we have.
Para hacer un trabajo colectivo es reconocer qué disfrutamos hacer y cuál es nuestra misión de estar haciendo lo que estamos haciendo.
In order to recognize our collective values, we have to. ¿Otra vez puedes repetir?
Es que,
Ajá.
lo que dije. Reconocer nuestras virtudes
We want to recognize our virtues
y cómo las podemos conectar con las
and
virtudes
how can we connect with the virtues
de la gente con la que
of the people
trabajamos.
that we work with.
Cómo reconocemos nuestras
How
debilidades
can we recognize our weaknesses
y cómo respetamos
And-
las debilidades y los
and
retos de
how can
otros.
we respect, the weaknesses of the others that are working with us.
Y que el trabajo que hagamos sea en beneficio de una colectividad.
And then the work we do, it benefits the entire collective.
Y esa colectividad implica estar consciente de todo, de la responsabilidad que tenemos los humanos
And then among the collective, we have to be aware of the responsibility that we all have as humans
de cuidar todo lo que la naturaleza nos da
to take care of all what nature is giving us
para tener los privilegios que tenemos
in order to have the privileges that we all have
y de vivir como vivimos.
and to live as we live today.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ixquik. That is so powerful and also resonates with me. And so what I have to say is along the same lines as what's been said, which is relationship is key, not just as humans, but also other beings, considering them as our kin, as our relatives. Like I said, in the word kapwa, the Filipino word kapwa encompasses not just fellow human beings, but also beings that are other than human or more than human. And at the risk of repeating what has been said already, I do want to say that this is our responsibility. And I do believe that the climate crisis that we now have is a result of our centering only humanity's needs and wants and agenda, and at the expense of all other beings. So my advice then, if I may be so preposterous as to offer one, is this, and it's both, I think, easy and difficult, which is to learn to dwell in the land where we now live by, for example, getting to know the birds that are in our backyard and the plants that are in our front yard, and to take the time to slow down and listen to what they have to say, because they do have a lot to teach us. And I feel that this is easy because it's just in our backyard, but it's also very difficult because it requires time and stillness and a different mindset, and something that we struggle with, I think, as modern people. If we could create rituals that include them, that would be great. If you have children, play with them outdoors and let them see you engage with the rest of creation on a personal basis. Let them see you offer your hair to the river, for example, as a gift to the river and as a way to ask for permission before you wade in the water. things like that. I remember when I did that with my kids, they were like, "What are you doing, Mama? That's crazy." But they've gotten used to it, and now they talk to the river when they go. So little things like that, I think, would be very, very helpful in getting us to this this worldview or this mindset where we connect with creation and not just people. So really what I am just proposing is that we form reciprocal caring relationships with human beings, but also other than human beings, to show that we understand that we are all kin, responsible for each other, and that we are grateful for each other's carings. So just to sum it up, love and caring is what I am proposing. Again, thank you for the time.
I greatly appreciate our sisters for giving those elaborations. As we can all see here that are on the call, our sentiments, our values, and our worldviews are very much in sync. Indigenous peoples share that common base, that basic grounding, and I think that that should emphasize that it is necessary, it is important for all human beings to have that recognition of who you are in your own time and space. And our humanity is in trouble. The world is in trouble, and it's specifically because of one reason is the climate crisis. You know, sometimes I reflect on the prediction that was made by a man that many of the associates of A Great Place to Work will remember. One of the brilliant minds of modern times, which is I'll remember his name, but he said that in 2016, or perhaps it was 2006, he said this earth has only 100 years to live. And if it was 2016, then we have only 97 years. This earth, this planet, and he attributed that prediction to say that the demise of the earth will be attributed to three factors. One is the nuclear threat. Two is the virulent disease. And three is the climate crisis. And you know, we need to be realistic to know that that's where we are right now. We need to understand the predicament that white supremacy has placed this earth in. It's not the fault of indigenous people that the world is in the condition that it's in, but it's the responsibility of all people to try to mitigate the place that we are at, to try to rescue the future of the grandchildren. And the way that we need to do that is to practice that original teaching that I alluded to earlier, which is that we all must care for each other, that we must all care for the earth. And that reciprocity of life is the key to the balance that we talk about, that harmony that we that we strive for as human beings. So as Indigenous peoples here, along with my sisters and Joanna and Nicole, we leave you with these teachings, these words, and hope that you will understand them and begin to illuminate your lives and radiate these teachings, because that is what is so necessary right now, that all humanity must come back to those basic roots, those basic teachings.
Thank you, Chili, Justine, Ixquik, for sharing some of your wisdom. I keep hearing these words of reciprocity, of one another, of everything around us. And I see all of you on the screen from very different physical locations, very different Indigenous backgrounds, and yet also hearing it originate in a very similar place. I know we only have a couple of minutes, so I want to open up the floor, the screen, the mics. If anyone has any questions for the panelists, or if the panelists have any questions for one another.
Joanna, I have a question. Thank you to you all, Joanna, Nicole, Ixquik, Justine, Chile, for being able to be present with us. And there's just so much words and of wisdom, but also, experience that you've shared with us. I love, what I've heard about you all and your work around being keepers of culture, being connectors of generations, models of how reciprocity really works to help heighten, humanity. Knowing that there's just so many things that are going on right now. I would love to hear from each of you, or whoever would like to share. What's one example of hope, in your experience just recently that has kind of given you the fuel for the work that you're doing to help continue, connecting all of us as humans?
Well, I might just say that we have to have hope. That's all we can do, and to make those efforts that will realize that hope that we have. The Mayan calendar that changed in December 2012, did signal a change. Many indigenous cultures, many tribes have the same story about a time when we would need to make a decision. The Mayan calendar didn't talk about an ending of the world. It's certainly a turning of the page. And the decision rests with humanity in that, do we continue on the path that we are on, or do we change? And that's exactly what I am advocating here, that we are advocating. And that's the hope that we must have, but it takes all of us. It takes all of humanity to make that change.
What gives me hope is witnessing how young kids, like my own, they're I'm blanking on how old they are now, but they're young, how easy they grasp the idea that the world is sentient and not dead or just resources. I feel that, for example, I was saying I would offer my hair to the river when we would go camping, and they thought that was crazy. But over time, they too have started talking to the river and doing their own little rituals with nature. And that gives me a lot of hope, because I feel that with these young kids having that worldview, having that idea that, yes, the river is alive, you know, the stones are alive, all these things are alive, it would make them care more about the rest of the world. And it won't be won't be such a hard sell, you know, it would be just something that they would just automatically do. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Sí, muchas gracias.
So thank you very much.
Entre los trabajos y las responsabilidades que tengo por ser indígena,
Among
también soy Ixquik.
Among the work and responsibilities that I have, I am also an Ixquik, a daykeeper or a medicine woman here.
Y recientemente hicimos una ceremonia con varias mujeres.
So recently we made a Mayan ritual, a Mayan ceremony with lots of women.
Y cada una pues, invocaba y tenía su conexión con sus ancestros.
Each one of them invoked and had a connection with their ancestors.
Y el objetivo de la ceremonia fue conectar otra vez con la naturaleza.
And then the goal of this ceremony was to connect with nature.
Y encontrar la manera de cómo ella nos sana a nosotros.
And how to find how Mother Earth can heal us.
Y que está.
And then that healing
ella,
energy it's there and is within us.
Pero eso también implica una responsabilidad.
But also this means that it takes a responsibility.
Y cada una reconocerá la suya.
And each one of them recognize that.
Y pues la esperanza que tengo es
So the hope that I have now is
que nos podemos sanar
that we all can heal each other.
A nosotros mismos, a nuestro colectivo
To our
y a la
collective
naturaleza.
and to nature.
Pero está en nuestras manos.
But it's in our hands to do that.
I think that is a beautiful place to wrap up today. As much as I would love to spend so much more time asking you all questions and keeping the floor open, I do know that we do have until top of the hour, and I want to respect all of your time. So I do have this ask of my Great Place to Work colleagues, that you take a moment after this time today, whether it's later today or after this, and just think about what you're feeling after this conversation, what you want to take from it, and how you might want to bring it into the weekend, into Monday when it is Indigenous Peoples Day celebrated, and how we might be able to bring this into our work, these teachings into our day, into our weekend, into our life, into our work. Thank you all so much, all the panelists, for your time today and all the time preparing for this. Huge thank you to Berg, to Apiary, to Juntos for co-sponsoring this event all together. Big thank you to Nicole and to Lizelle, who's been on the back end of this. And thank you all for joining us today and for sharing your time with us. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your Friday.
Thank you. This is great.